Wheels on the ground. Hey.
Let's get these wheels in motion. Turn off the wheel, cut the power. This lifetime feels like an hour.
Hey, what's up guys? Matt here coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So today we're going to be talking about the Ultra Limited in the 2022 model year. And because a lot of this information is overlapping with the Road Glide Limited, we're basically going to be talking about those two bikes in a package video here. Really the only difference between the Ultra Limited and the Road Glide Limited is just the fairing. Many of you that follow Harley-Davidson know that there's always an ongoing debate between which is better for your riding preferences, the batwing fairing or the shark nose fairing. I'm not going to go into that debate on which fairing is best for you in this video. I'm mostly just going to focus on the motorcycles and what they offer and if one of these two limiteds is best for you. So as an added bonus, I was lucky enough to have an Apex edition paint set in stock here. So I'll also be showing off this new Apex paint. This came out about a couple months ago and this is a limited edition factory paint. You're going to pay about a $2,400 upcharge above and beyond the MSRP of the motorcycle. This bike is also equipped with the black finishes or the black engine trim. So everything from your engine, your forks, your struts, your engine guards, your bars. A lot of the hard metal surfaces on this bike have been treated with the black finish. And on the Ultra and the Road Glide Limited, you pay a little under $2,000 for that touch. So between those two factory options, you're at about a $4,400 bump. And the other factory option on these bikes is the RDRS, the Reflex Defensive Rider System. And what that is a collection of electronic rider aids. So that's going to be like your traction control, your torque drag slip control. Those features aid the riders based off of data they receive from the 6-axis IMU, which is a sensor that senses like your lean angle of the bike, and it also uses data off the ABS wheel bearing sensors. The RDRS also gets you a tire pressure monitoring system, so you can see what your tire pressure is electronically in your infotainment system. And then you've also got hill hold mode, which if you're on a steep incline on a hill, you can squeeze your brake firmly and it locks up the rear wheel, and then when you go to take off again, it automatically releases for a smooth takeoff on a steep incline. So in a nutshell guys, and I think a lot of you can kind of deduct this from just looking at the bike, the Ultra Limited and the Road Glide Limited are Harley-Davidson's all-in touring machines. They're for the rider that likes to go long distance and have multiple day trips out on the road. It has been really interesting to see what Harley-Davidson has historically called their Electroglide really go through a lot of different changes over the years. In recent history, if you want to go back about 10 years ago, Harley-Davidson had multiple versions of their batwing fairing touring machine with the tour pack on the back. They had the Electroglide Classic, which is like your base version. They had an Electroglide Ultra Classic, which then you added a few more features like lower leg fairings and additional speakers on the bike. In 2010, that's when Harley-Davidson first launched the Ultra Limited, which is technically the model we have right now. The FLHTK is the model designation. The thing that made the Ultra Limited special back when it was first introduced in 2010 is they had a bump in displacement. That's when they first introduced the 103 cubic inch engine up from the 96 cubic inch. And I believe that year as well is when they first introduced heated grips on these bikes. And then soon after that, they introduced low versions of these. They had the Ultra Classic Low, they had the Ultra Limited Low, and that was Harley-Davidson's attempt to make this bike more accessible to people that didn't have as long of an inseam. And the low versions of the Electroglide lasted for a few years and then slowly phased out. In the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of the touring chassis buyers' preferences have shifted to more of a sleek minimalist bagger. There just became a lot less of a need to have a bunch of different versions of the Electroglide. And personally, I think that's a great shift. At one point, there was like 5 or 6 different Electroglides that you could order and buy, and it just became like way too many bikes. And so after a lot of different versions over the years, we're now just left with 2 bikes that come from the factory with the tour packs outside of the CVO family, which is the Batwing Faired Ultra Limited and the Shark Nose Faired Road Glide Limited. So in these videos, I like to point out the most significant features about these bikes and the most significant equipment on here and point out when when they came about and when they were last updated to give you an idea of how this bike has evolved over the last decade or so. So all the motorcycles in Harley-Davidson's Grand American Touring category can all be found on Harley-Davidson's touring chassis that was first launched in the 2009 model year. So when that new frame came out in 2009, I remember some of the highlights for the fact that it used a lot less parts and welding. The swing arm was a lot more rigid. You went to a fatter swing arm, which accommodated for the 180 millimeter rear tire, up from a 140. That was a real big change, both functionally and visually as well. On this bike, I would say that the frame is probably the oldest part that is of high significance that I think is probably overdue for updating. And although Harley-Davidson's touring bikes have been riding on this chassis for a while, I still think it's really good, and I don't feel like the fact that it's 13 years old is really showing its age much. However, the frame does influence some of the ancillary parts of this bike, namely the suspension, and the suspension is one thing that I think is kind of the Achilles heel on some of Harley-Davidson's touring chassis bikes. And more specifically, where we get the majority of people that are dissatisfied with the suspension is on bikes that have the lowered touring suspension. So that's Harley-Davidson's, I think it's about a 12-inch shock, and that's going to be found on all your Road Glides and your Street Glides and your Road King specials. There's a lot of bikes that Harley-Davidson has put this lowered shock on it in an attempt to both drop the seat height and also to give it that lowered appearance. But in doing so, you're losing some of the travel. However, on the Road Glide Limited and Ultra Limited, you have the taller of the two shocks, and you combine that with a really comfortable seat. I don't feel like ride comfort and the suspension is any issue at all. In fact, it's a really nice, comfortable ride going down the road. In 2014, Harley-Davidson came out with what they called the Project Rushmore. That's when they went to the new fairing design with the slipstream vents on the front. That's when they went to their new infotainment systems, both the 4.3 and the 6.5. The 6.5 had touchscreen, Bluetooth, navigation, a lot of the things we see now. In 2019, they updated that again, and that's what we have now currently is the GTS boom audio system. In the 2014 Rushmore project, that's also when we saw a lot of things like the saddlebags opening up with different latches, the shapes of the saddlebags changed, the fender look changed. They started introducing LED lights on some bikes. So anything older than a 2014 model year bike, you're really taking a big hit in technology and just what the bike offers. In the 2014 model year, that's also when we saw the forks get really beefed up, fatter to a 49 millimeter front end. They beefed up the steering head bearing as well. So the bikes in the 2014 model year, their capability was significantly increased with their ability just to go hard down the highway, through turns, be stable, through long, fast sweepers out on the highway. And then in 2019, like I already mentioned, they went to the GTS boom audio infotainment system. The screen resolution got better. The processor in the infotainment system got better. Additional features, new software, a lot more intuitive design and how to navigate the menus. And then in the 2020 model year, that's when we saw the introduction of the Reflex defensive rider system, which I already explained. And that is currently an option on all of the touring bikes at $1,025. So in my opinion, these are the key years when Harley-Davidson made significant mechanical changes to the bikes that ultimately give us the Ultra Limited that we have today. And there's been a lot of different finishes, touches, and wheel designs, and electronic things like changes in LED lights and small stuff like that. When it actually comes down to the bones and the makeup of the bike and how it performs and how it looks, these are the most important milestone years that have created the Ultra Limited as we know it today. So I think in most review videos, you listen to somebody talk about the good things and the bad things about the bike and what they could have done better and some of the weak points and things like that. And I've certainly had that narrative in some of my Ultra Limited videos I've done in the past. But in this video, I want to take a little bit different approach. I've talked about those things in the past, and really what I want to do is talk about the bike in terms of how it matches up against other competing bikes in Harley-Davidson's lineup. These bikes get shopped really frequently against the Road Glide Special and the Street Glide Special, and Harley-Davidson sells a lot of those motorcycles. The Road Glide and the Street Glide Special are among Harley-Davidson's very best sellers in the touring family, and I think as a result we see less of the full dresser bikes. Like I mentioned, a lot of the electric glides have gone away over the years and we're now left with these two different versions. And I think that's a lot of times just because when people come in to buy a bike, they don't take everything into consideration about how they're really going to enjoy the bike. And so I'm going to jump into a walk around on the Ultra Limited and really take you through the different things that you get on this bike above and beyond a regular Road Glide or a Street Glide Special, and really help you guys determine if this is the right bike for you. So we took out the two bikes the Road Glide Limited and the Ultra Limited, took them for a spin. But now I really want to show you guys just what the differences are between a limited version of these bikes and a special version of these bikes. So you have the Street Glide Special and the Road Glide Special. Here I have a Road Glide Special. I'm going to be comparing the Road Glide Special against the Ultra Limited, just so we have a variation in fairings as I'm showing you guys these things. But really, the differences there between the Shark Nose and the Batwing fairing is virtually the same in terms of the rest of the bike. The fairings are different, and that's a completely different subject, and I'll go into that. I've touched on that in the past, and I'll probably do future videos on that as well. We're not talking about the fairings here, but everything else on these bikes is the same. So for those of you who watch my channel for a while, you'll know that in a lot of circumstances, I tell people that they should have just bought the Limited. I feel like so many people want to buy the special version of a Road Glide or a Street Glide because it has that cool factor. Maybe they feel like they're too young for this bike or they're not ready yet to be an old man, when really I think that's just kind of baloney. People should buy the bike that fits the type of riding they're going to do. And we will talk about that a lot on this channel. Get the bike that suits your needs the best and suits your type of riding the best. You know, I see a lot of guys that buy the Special and they then buy the Tour Pack. They then buy a taller windshield. They'll buy maybe heated grips. They'll buy a bigger seat, a nicer seat. Maybe they ride with a passenger. So they'll buy a seat that's more comfortable for their passenger. And now you're spending just as much, if not more, than you would have had you just bought the Limited in the first place. So in a nutshell, the Ultra Limited is the bike that is great for someone who really favors comfort out on the highway, long road trips out on the highway. You're doing, you know, a lot of mileage, and someone who also needs the storage space. And until you've had a bike that has good storage space, you don't know what you're missing, especially when you're going on a multi-day trek. You really can't have enough space, especially if you're riding with two people. Most of the guys I ride with, we all have Tour Packs. You know, just having that additional space. I carry a lot of camera equipment, so pretty much my Tour Pack is 100% just camera equipment. But let's walk through some of the stuff that sets the Limiteds apart from the Specials. And I'm going to try to quantify that with like a dollar value as well, just to kind of give you guys an idea of everything that does come on these bikes, because I think a lot of times it's underappreciated and people don't know exactly what the Limited offers above and beyond the Special version. So we'll start off first with the Tour Pack. That's the most obvious thing, right? So you have a King Tour Pack. Harley-Davidson also offers a chopped Tour Pack that is slimmer than this. I have it on my personal bike. It doesn't fit as much stuff, obviously. People would argue that it has a cooler, you know, look and style to it. But from the factory, you can only get a King Tour Pack. The King Tour Pack can fit 2 full face helmets in here. So if you were to try to get this after the fact through parts and accessory on like a Road Glide Special, you're going to be spending about $2,000 just for the Tour Pack. And that includes the mounting bracket, the actual Tour Pack, the backrest pad, all that stuff, about $2,000. And that doesn't even include the speakers. You've got 2 additional speakers back here on the Limiteds as well that I think get overlooked a lot. To get these installed on a bike that doesn't come with it from the factory, you're looking close to $1,000 after you factor in the additional amp and the speakers and the labor and everything to install it. So you're easily $3,000 right here just in a Tour Pack alone. Second thing, we'll talk about suspension as well. And this can't really be overstated. The suspension is an important piece of the puzzle on this bike and an important piece of what makes this bike more comfortable than, say, like a Special. So you have Harley-Davidson's 13-inch shock. So it's their full travel touring shock on this bike. On the Specials, you have the lowered shock. They go for that slammed profile on those bikes to give it more of that drop down look. Next up, you got the seat. This seat is extremely comfortable. You can go hours and hours and hours all day for both the rider and the passenger in this seat. A lot of surface area for the passenger in here. They actually upgraded it in the 2014 model year. When the Rushmore project came out, they made it deeper, they made it wider, and surface area is a big component in overall comfort on a seat. And of course you got this backrest in here as well, which is super comfy for a passenger. So if you travel 2 up, that right there alone is really worth its weight in gold. You can always get a detachable kit for these bikes. The detachable kit, I want to say, is about $600 or $700. Plus labor to install it and everything. You're about $1,000 when it's all said and done. So you can get this all to be removable. So that's less expensive to get than adding that Tour Pack to a Road Glide or Street Glide Special. So this can be removed. I will say that once you remove this, the seat kind of looks disproportionate because it is kind of puffy and pillowy. So if you don't have this back here, the seat just looks kind of out of place. Next up, heated grips. So heated grips, you got to internally wire them, and that's a lot of labor for a technician to install the heated grips on here. So you're looking probably about $800. What is it, $800 or so, Andrew, to get this installed? So $800 to get heated grips installed. You got those right away. amazing component to have when you're out on the road on, you know, a cold day or whatever. Next up, this bike does come with a headset. It's one of the ones that is wired headset. It plugs right in, it's ready to go. So right out of the box, you have a headset ready where you just clip it to your helmet, and now you're ready to be taking phone calls and communicating to your passenger. You have to buy a passenger headset if you want to go that route, but you have all that on the bike when you buy it. You don't have any of that communication stuff on the Road Glide or Street Glide Special. Now, the next thing, and this is something that can kind of go either way as far as preference, and I know a lot of people don't buy the Limited for this reason specifically, and that is the lower leg fairings. The lower leg fairings are nothing new. They've been around for a long time, but in the introduction of the twin-cooled motor, which came about, I want to say 2014 with the twin cam, they started using these to house the radiators that pipe the coolant around the heads of the motor, and they continued to use them when the Milwaukee 8 engine came out in the 2017 model year. So for that reason, these cannot be removed. And you know, I talked to a lot of guys. I talked to the 2-lane guys recently, and they both are running Road Glide Specials, and they have King Tour Packs back there, and I said, dude, Lance, Galen, why didn't you guys just get the Limited? Why did you get the Road Glide Special? And usually the response is always the same, where it's either, well, I didn't know I was gonna need all that stuff, which isn't what they said, but they said, I didn't like the lower leg fairings. And so I get it, some people don't like these. They want that more slimmed down minimalist look on a bike, and they don't want the large footprint that these have. And I understand that, but I think there's a couple things to consider. These are actually super nice at deflecting wind as well. You know, aside from the additional cooling properties you have on your motor, which this does help cool the motor down above and beyond just the oil cooling that's on the non-limiteds. But these are gonna cool the motor down, and it is also extremely nice in cold weather, just to block all the wind from your legs. And it also blocks additional wind that would otherwise come up and hit you in the body. Plus you also have these wind deflectors on here as well, which I think is a feature that's overlooked a lot. These can be installed on a regular Street Glide, but between these and the lower leg fairings, you're really creating a lot larger rider bubble when you're out on the open highway, which on a hot day might not, you know, be a real beneficial thing, but on a cold day, it's very, very beneficial. You know, you're really, you know, slicing through the wind, and you're gonna be a lot warmer on the bike than you would otherwise. While we're at the front of the bike, you've got the passing lamps on here. So these right here, between the light bulbs, the LED light bulbs, and the passing lamp housings, you're about $1,000 right there alone. So that's a $1,000 upgrade if you were to put those on the Street Glide. I've actually done it on my last 2 Street Glides that I've owned. It does give you a significant upgrade in the light and the illumination on the road. A guy like me that's out on the road a lot, freeway, late at night, that's definitely nice to have. I would say you're probably 50% more light, if not more, with those additional lights on there. If you go back probably like 5 or 6 years, I think a lot of people would argue just the overall style of the Limiteds just wasn't as up to par. The wheels weren't as like custom looking as like a Road Glide or Street Glide Special. However, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, Harley-Davidson has given all the finishes and treatments and custom looking nature that maybe was only exclusively available on the Street Glide and the Road Glides, and applied that to the Limiteds. And so that's really not even an excuse anymore. You can get the bike in either the chrome or the black finish. You're about $2,000 if you want the black finish on here. You've got an 18-inch wheel on here. For a long time, it was just a 17-inch up front. This is a Slicer 2 wheel, I believe is what they call it. It's been out for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years now. It's definitely no longer your old traditional, you know, geezer glide, as a lot of people refer to them as. Yeah, you've got a lot of the styling, a lot of the modern cool factor that I think people think that you could only find in the Road Glide. You also got a taller windshield on here. I think that's pretty obvious. If you get out on the highway, it's gonna really deflect a heck of a lot more wind than the short windshields on the Road Glide and the Street Glide. Another comfort feature that you're gonna find on the Limiteds is larger floorboards for the passenger. You're just gonna have a lot more comfort back there. These do move up and down slightly as well. So if you've got a taller or shorter rider, the floorboard mounting can move up and down based on the length of their inseam. Now let's move over to the Road Glide Special here. And again, the Road Glide and the Street Glide Special are basically the same bike with the exception of the fairing. Now on the Specials, you got the stretched bags that drop down and wrap around the exhaust here. That's been a trademark feature since, I want to say, the 2018 model year. And so you don't have the stretched bags on the Limiteds. Again, this is one more thing to kind of give it that, you know, real low profile, slammed custom bagger look. The air cleaner on the Specials They call this the ventilator air cleaner. You got the exposed air filter element on there, which again gives it a little bit more of that custom hot rod appeal to it. You've got a 19-inch wheel in the front. These are the Prodigy wheels. So not necessarily one is better than the other. This is a little bit bigger, and therefore maybe it looks a little bit more that custom bagger look. For a long time, the big wheel baggers, as a lot of people refer to them as, were real influential in how these bikes have kind of evolved at the factory over the years. Really low profile seat. This seat is not the most comfortable seat out on the highway, but it has a low profile to it, so it looks sleek and gives it that custom bagger look to it. Again, no heated grips, shorter windshield. Infotainment system is the same, so all your electronics on here are going to be the same, except for the fact that you don't have the real easy plug and play communication with the headset. You can, however, purchase the WIM, which is the wireless headset interface module on this, and get the wireless connectivity on here. You know, you're about $300 for the headset, and then the WIM is another $300, so you're about $600 just to get into the game, you know, wirelessly with this. I would say really take a good look at what you're going to use the bike for. Is it going to be like a local boulevard cruiser where you prioritize, you know, the sleekness of this, the overall look and aesthetics of it, or do you want something that's a little bit more functional, a little bit more utility to it, because you're going to save a lot of money just buying the Limited off the floor than you would, you know, taking a Road Glide and trying to convert it to a lot of the things that I see people do, the tour pack, the seat, the grips. These bikes are pretty close in price. These bikes both have the new Apex, a limited edition paint set on them, and so you pay a premium for that. But stock MSRP, I want to say this bike is about $27.5, and the Limited is probably about $1,000 or $1,500 more. So they're relatively close in price. And so instead of thinking, okay, you know, which one, I'll just buy the Road Glide Special and I'll just spend the money if I want to make it more touring capable, I'd say that's probably the wrong approach, and it's more cost effective in a lot of circumstances just to buy the Limited from the get-go. And if you want to slim this down a little bit by getting a detachable tour pack kit and maybe a different seat, you're going to save yourself a lot of money in the long run without compromising much of the style. You know, you could probably argue that, okay, well, I don't get the bags and maybe the wheels don't quite look as good as the big 19-inch front wheel on the Special. But other than that, you know, you still have the finishes, you still have a lot of the different parts and highlights that both of the bikes have. And so, again, really take a look at how you're gonna ride the bikes and how you're gonna enjoy them and go from there. That's about it, guys. Hopefully you've learned a lot about the Ultra Limited and the Road Glide Limited. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you're looking for a bike in Southern California, hit us up here at Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Later.
Wheels on the ground. Hey.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe to see all my Harley videos. We'll see you on the road.
Nice.
Thanks for watching, guys. Thankful you hit the subscribe button.
Good job. Now try it one more time.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe button.